She's 74. We can prove limited capacity. He said it like he was ordering a coffee, so matter-of-fact, like my whole life could be filed away as outdated, and no one would even blink. I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did. I was standing in the hallway, just a few steps from the kitchen, holding this little glass bowl of lemon shortbread. The kettle was whistling behind me, peppermint tea bags already in the cups, his favorite, not that he's remembered that in years. I just set out the napkins when I heard his voice through the doorway. "Early signs are there," he said, calm, calculated. She repeats herself, mixes up dates. We can show she needs oversight. Get the medical affidavit, lock down power of attorney. We move before year end. Then another voice came in, a man's, cool, detached. "Do you anticipate resistance?" Andrew let out a short laugh. "She's not confrontational. She's always been gentle." Gentle. I just stood there, half in the hallway, half in the kitchen. My hand shook a little, thumb pressing the rim of the bowl. I stared at the back of his head, him, slouched in Arthur's old armchair like he owned it, his father's chair. Legs crossed, phone in one hand, that smug little smile like he'd just closed a deal. "My name is Marion Blake. I raised that boy, paid for his braces, sewed buttons back onto his debate jacket the night before state finals, sat in the rain for Little League, and cheered even when he struck out. I held him after the funeral when he couldn't stop shaking. I've been a daughter, a wife, a librarian, a widow. But in that moment, I was something else, something I hadn't felt since Arthur died, awake. I didn't say a word, didn't drop the cookies, didn't storm in or slam anything. I just walked back into the kitchen, steady, quiet, poured the tea, added honey to his like always. When I handed him the cup, he didn't even look at me, just said thanks, like it meant nothing. And I said, of course, like I always do. He left 15 minutes later, said something about a showing across town. I watched his car back out of the driveway. It had started to drizzle, and the pavement reflected everything in long, watery shadows. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered, but not faded. Back inside, I sat down at the kitchen table, watched the steam rise from the peppermint tea between my hands. I didn't drink it, just watched the ripples until they settled. Then I got up, walked over to the china hutch, pulled out the side drawer, took out the file folder labeled Arthur, Trust, and POA. Corners were a little yellow, but everything still neat. His handwriting was on the last page, blue ink, careful as ever. Arthur had always believed in clarity, in being prepared. But not for this. I stayed up all night, read every line, underlined, flagged, memorized. Because if Andrew was starting to move his pieces, I had to steady the board. And the next morning, no sleep, no mascara, still wearing the cardigan I dozed off in, I walked out the front door. Not to fight, not yet, but to remember who I am, to start from the part of me that's still whole. The bell over the bakery door chimed, just like it did 30 years ago. Light, crisp, almost like the sound a memory would make. And the smell, it was the same too. Sweet butter, warm cinnamon, that hint of nutmeg lingering in the air like a hymn you never quite learned but somehow always knew. I stepped inside, loosening my scarf as the door clicked shut behind me. The cold stayed outside. Somewhere near the ceiling, a soft jazz version of Silent Night was playing. It sounded like it had been on loop for weeks. Mrs. Norwood looked up from behind the counter. Her hair was shorter now, grayer too, but that smile hadn't changed. "Well, I'll be," she said, eyes lighting up. "Marion Blake, still keeping that little garden of yours?" I smiled, tried to remember the last time we'd spoken. "It's mostly weeds now, not roses, but yeah, still keeping it." She nodded, like that answer settled something in her. Arthur always did like my raisin buns, didn't he? He did, I said, every Sunday after Mass. And just like that, we were back. Not in the same moment, but the same rhythm. I ordered a peppermint tea and a cranberry scone, took them to the window seat, the one near the heater, the same spot where Andrew spilled hot cocoa when he was 10, then apologized so much that Mrs. Norwood gave him a second pastry just to quiet him down. The chair across from me was empty now. It hadn't always been. I unzipped my purse and pulled out a small black notebook. No title, just blank pages. I clicked my pen, held it in the air for a second, letting the steam from the tea rise against my face. Then I wrote the first name, Sandra Klein, retired notary, trustworthy. Then another, David O'Brien, estate attorney, Eugene. My hand was steady. I wasn't rushing, and for the first time in days, it didn't feel like I was just reacting to everything around me. I was actually responding. Outside, a group of teenagers laughed as they passed, red cups in hand, scarves bouncing behind them. I sat up a little straighter. When I finished the last bite of scone and tucked the notebook away, I bundled back up and headed home. The wind had picked up, but I didn't mind. I passed the old library. It closed for renovations 3 winters ago and was never reopened. Now it just sat there, paint peeling, steps covered in a thin layer of frost. I climbed 2 steps anyway, looked through the dusty glass doors. That building used to be my refuge, my little chapel. I used to tell Andrew, when you don't know what to believe, go read someone else's questions. He never really got what I meant. Now I placed my palm on the cold railing, made a quiet promise to myself. Not out loud, not dramatic, just something settled deep inside me, a truth between me and the bones that hold me up. He didn't slip up. He didn't get confused. He meant every word. And if Andrew thought I was fading, I'd make damn sure the whole town saw me blaze. The zipper caught halfway, same as always. I tugged it gently, careful not to force it. Arthur's coat, brown wool with that little snag near the collar, still smelled like him. Tobacco, cedar, and that hint of aftershave he stopped wearing the year he turned 70. I held it to my face a little longer than I meant to. Rain had started tapping on the bedroom window, soft, steady, that cold December kind that settles in your bones if you're not paying attention. I leaned against the closet frame, reached for the step stool, and climbed up, slowly, 1 rung at a time. The lockbox was right where it had always been, tucked behind an old shoebox and a brittle Christmas wreath. Black metal, still cold to the touch. I brought it down and set it on the bed, right next to Arthur's coat. My hand went straight for the left pocket, almost without thinking. That's where he always kept his receipts, old mints, and, if he was being careful, the key. It was there, hidden behind a faded receipt from McCormick's Hardware, 12 years old, small brass key, warm in my palm. Arthur used to say, if anything ever happens to me, don't just trust paper, keep a backup. The law forgets, people don't. The lock gave way with a tired little click, like it had been waiting. Inside was a neat stack of documents in a blue folder and 1 cream envelope with my name on it, in his handwriting. I checked the documents first, his will, his trust, updated power of attorney from 2 years before he passed, my name, in black ink, underlined. My role was clear, legal, binding. I wasn't misremembering. I wasn't confused. I had proof. Then I opened the envelope, slid my finger under the flap. His writing looked a little shakier, but it was still his. Arthur never used more words than he needed. He didn't have to. My love, if you're reading this, something has gone sideways. They'll come for the quiet ones first, the ones who won't shout, who still believe in decency. Don't let them mistake your silence for weakness. You know more than they think. trust your gut, and for God's sake, don't let them bully you. I'll always be in your corner. A. The paper shook just a little in my hand, but not my fingers. I read it twice, then again, not because I didn't get it, but because I did. His voice filled the room, not like a ghost, like a presence, like certainty. I got up, walked over to the desk, opened my laptop, scanned every page, front and back, saved it to a folder I renamed Guardian Oak, added a password, then backed it up on the external drive I keep taped to the underside of the drawer. I didn't cry, but I did hang his coat back in the closet, smoothed the sleeves, and when I reached to close the door, I caught my reflection in the mirror, chin lifted, eyes steady. Andrew thinks I'm confused, thinks I threw all that paperwork out like it was nothing, but I've got everything I need. He thinks I'm alone, but Arthur's voice, it's louder than his greed. And if any part of this feels familiar, if you've ever been doubted, overlooked, quietly dismissed, just know I see you, truly, and I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to prove you were stronger than they thought? Leave me a comment. I read every single one. And if this story feels like something you want to walk through with me, go ahead and subscribe. There's more coming. And what happens next? I didn't see it coming either. I didn't leave the house that morning looking for answers. I just needed eggs, maybe some celery for soup. But there she was, Eleanor Hayes, like a dog-eared page in a book I thought I'd already finished. Her purple scarf shimmered under the lights of the community center, those tiny silver birds still catching the light. She'd worn that same scarf to Arthur's funeral, and somehow, after all these years, it looked exactly the same. Or maybe I just remembered how it moved when she hugged me outside the church. The room smelled like burnt coffee and old toner, folding chairs lined up in rows, all facing a projector blinking, "Senior Property Rights, Know Your Options." I didn't plan to go in, just wandered, still clutching my grocery list. But when Eleanor turned and met my eyes, smiled without a second of hesitation, something in my spine let go. Not everything had changed. "Marian Blake," she said, voice steady as ever, "you look exactly the same." I laughed. It felt unfamiliar. "Then I hope you've got reading glasses." We ended up sitting near the back, sipping machine coffee from styrofoam cups. Her planner was open on her lap, full of neat blue handwriting, paper clips everywhere. She hadn't changed, still organized, still to the point. After the session, I told her about Andrew. Not everything, but enough. She didn't blink, just listened, nodded, eyes sharp and focused. "I remember when Arthur brought me that folder," she said he wanted it airtight, so no one could come in later and rewrite the ending. I looked down into my cup. I think Andrew's trying to do just that. There was a pause between us. Not awkward, just full. Then Eleanor reached out and placed her hand on my wrist. "If he's moving pieces," she said softly, "you better steady the board." I didn't cry, didn't look away. There's something about being seen, really seen, by someone who knows the map of your life, someone who remembers who you were before the cracks. It straightens your back without even trying. She closed her planner and gave me that look I remembered from church council meetings, the one that meant she was already 3 steps ahead. "Come to my place tomorrow," she said. "We'll pull the county filings, see what's been logged. If there's smoke, we'll find the fire." Outside, the wind chased dry leaves down the sidewalk. I watched her turn the corner before heading to my car. My fingers were cold, but for the first time in weeks, my mind felt clear. I wasn't making it up. Arthur used to say the strongest walls are built from the quietest bricks. And Eleanor, she was a bricklayer, if I ever met one. As I pulled out of the parking lot, it hit me. This wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about taking something back, something that had started to slip long before Andrew made his move. Right before she left, Eleanor looked me in the eye and said, "You're not crazy, Marian, but you are at risk, and time's not on your side. And this time, I didn't flinch. I just nodded, because she was right, and maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. There's something strange about seeing your whole life broken down on lined paper. 3 columns: what I own, what I've given away, and what someone might try to take. I was sitting at the old oak desk in the study. The yellowed lampshade cast this soft glow over the pages, and the rain was tapping gently on the roof, like a metronome for memory. I hadn't used that desk much since Arthur passed, but tonight it felt right. The heater kicked on every now and then, humming low like an old friend remembering its job. I opened the first file box and started laying everything out. Deed to the house, Arthur's trust, insurance policies, our joint savings statements. Some pages still had the little corner folds Arthur used to make when he wanted to bring something up. He always did that, marked everything, annotated, circled in red. He used to say, "We're only as powerful as the records we keep." And honestly, he wasn't wrong. I picked up the phone and called Eleanor. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Quick question," I said, skipping any small talk, "about the deed. Does it matter that both our names are still on it? Should I have updated that?" She didn't even pause. "No, it's good. It shows continuity. But scan it, Marion. Everything. Make 3 copies. 1 for the house, 1 off-site, 1 digital. And please label them." I looked over at the messy stack of half-filled manila folders. "Working on it," I muttered. "Need help?" she asked. I need a 20-year-old with tech sense. "You've still got Chloe's old iPad, don't you?" I did. It still had the glittery pink case and that little crack in the corner. I hadn't touched it in months, but it powered on with a soft glow. Took me longer than I'd like to figure out how to scan and save things, but once I got into the rhythm, I started moving. I labeled every file carefully. home.deed.pdf, Arthur_trust_full.pdf, POA_mblake_final.pdf. By midnight, the desk was covered in scanned pages, USB drives, sticky notes, and way too many empty tea mugs. I stretched my back and opened the bottom drawer, Arthur's drawer. Tucked under a pile of tax returns was an envelope, his handwriting again. Not a full letter, just 1 line. "If they forget you, remind them in ink." I stared at that line longer than I should have. Maybe he wrote it for someone else. Maybe not. Either way, it felt like a challenge. I grabbed a blank sheet from the notepad and started writing. Not just what I owned, but what mattered. My house, my name on the accounts, my intention to keep both. Somewhere around page 3, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was armor. Every document I scanned, every file I named, that was a brick in a wall I was building. Not out of fear, out of determination. Andrew might have thought I'd forgotten things, that I'd gotten sloppy, that age meant I wasn't paying attention. But I have my memory. And now I have my paper trail. Let him come at me with claims and whispers. Let him file whatever it is he thinks he can file. Because now I'm ready. Let him test my mind. I still have my memory. And I've got my ink. "Your cognition is intact, Mrs. Blake. You're more lucid than some of my colleagues." Dr. Lennox smiled as she handed me a small packet of papers, signed, dated, official. I smiled back. Not big, just the kind of smile that lives behind the eyes. It was the first time in weeks I felt like someone actually saw me without squinting through assumptions. I hadn't gone to Elkin's family clinic to prove anything to Andrew. I went for me. I needed to know for myself. I needed something more solid than gut instinct, something I could hold, point to, lay on the table like a trump card if it ever came to that. The clinic hadn't changed much since Arthur's time. Soft lighting, bowls of peppermint mints at the reception desk, half-finished puzzles on a little wooden table in the waiting room. The air smelled like printer paper and hand sanitizer, oddly comforting. The receptionist looked up, maybe in her 20s, and smiled. "You're Marion Blake?" "Yes," I said, pulling my coat tighter, "here for the cognitive screening." Dr. Lennox's office was warm, full of soft morning light coming through the window. She wore a navy cardigan over a crisp white blouse, glasses low on her nose. Her tone was steady, not rushed, not patronizing. "We'll just chat," she said, motioning for me to sit. "I want to know who you are, not just how fast you can subtract sevens." We started with the basics: my address, today's date, the current president. Then she gave me 3 random words to remember and repeat later: apple, spoon, blanket. She folded her hands. "Tell me about your day, Marion, what you have for breakfast." "Peppermint tea and a scone," I said. "No butter. I'm saving that for Friday." She laughed. "You'd be surprised how many people can't remember breakfast. That says something." Next came language tasks, naming animals, interpreting little phrases, even some mental math. How many nickels in $1.75? Took me a second, but I got it. "Can I ask you something?" I said while she scribbled notes. "How much of this is science and how much is opinion?" She looked up. "Good question. Most of it's objective, memory, logic, reasoning, but some of it is judgment too, and mine says you're doing just fine." I let out a slow breath. "Would it be possible to get that in writing?" She nodded. "Absolutely. I'll even stamp it with a red ribbon if that helps keep greedy sons in check." I blinked, then laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do with the emotion pushing behind my eyes. When Arthur had his stroke, I brought him here too. I remember how he clenched his fists before every question, determined not to fail. I sat in this same building, watching him will his brain to keep up. Back then, I was the one reassuring him. Today, I came in on my own. Dr. Lennox handed me the report in a clear plastic folder. "Keep this safe," she said. "You're not fading, Marion, not on my watch." As I walked back through the waiting area, past the half-finished puzzle, the flickering lamp, something in me shifted. I wasn't just leaving with a folder. I was leaving with proof. Proof that I'm still here, still sharp, still me. And if Andrew ever tries to erase that, well, he'll have to get through that red ribbon first. Some days, the hardest part isn't proving you're capable. It's reminding yourself that you still matter. If you've ever felt like the world was moving on without you, I'd really love to know. How did you hold on to your sense of self? Drop me a comment. I'm listening. And if you're still here with me on this road, I hope you'll stick around, because what I found in that red folder, it changed more than just the paperwork. You think you're just being paranoid, until you're not, until your gut gets backed up by hard, cold evidence sitting there in plain sight. We were at Chloe's apartment that evening, half-eaten takeout everywhere, soft hum of some indie playlist looping in the background. The little desk lamp above her keyboard flickered, giving the whole place this warm, lived-in feel. I'd stopped by to help her polish a cover letter, maybe just distract myself for a bit. But the universe clearly had other plans. "Ugh," she groaned, dragging a folder across her screen. "Why do I still have access to Andrew's Dropbox? He must have forgotten to revoke me from the old family business drive." I gave a small smile, folding up an empty soy sauce packet. "Your uncle's not exactly known for cleaning up after himself." She clicked open a folder labeled Q4 Archive. Just standard admin stuff at first. Budgets, invoices, some PDF contracts. Then one file caught my eye. Proposed conservatorship petition, M. Blake. Chloe froze. "Wait, what?" She clicked it open. It was real, a formal draft, structured exactly like a legal filing. My name, right there. It started with words like declining cognitive capacity and risk of mismanaging financial assets. It cited dates, proposed giving full authority to Andrew Blake, my son. My breath caught, dry and sharp, like swallowing gravel. I reached out and put one shaking finger on the screen. There was my name, and there was his. He must have forgotten this was still synced to me, Chloe whispered. Her voice was tight, somewhere between shock and fury. The file had been saved 3 weeks ago, right around the time he asked me to sign something for the accountant. Said it's just old estate stuff, Mom. He lied. He wasn't planning to betray me. He already had. I stared at the line that read, "The subject exhibits confusion, erratic behavior, and diminished capacity to manage legal and financial matters independently." That's what he thought of me? Or worse, what he wanted people to believe. "I'll screenshot everything," Chloe said, already typing. "I'll send it to your secure folder. Do you want me to forward it to Eleanor too?" I couldn't answer right away. The silence filled the room, broken only by the clack of keys and the flutter of my own pulse in my throat. "He wasn't just planning to betray me," I finally said. "He already had." I wasn't angry. Not yet. I hadn't gotten there. What I felt was quieter, heavier, like something had settled inside me, permanent, undeniable. Grief, maybe. Not the kind that comes with death, but the kind that shows up with truth. Chloe looked at me, eyes sharp, full of fire. "We're not letting this go. You hear me?" I nodded. I wasn't alone, but I was at war, and this time I had the first piece of armor. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I wrote. The house was quiet in that specific way it only gets at 2 a.m., like even the walls are holding their breath. I sat at the kitchen table, soft yellow light pooling over the wood. Outside, frost had started gathering on the lawn, making everything shimmer like it had been dusted with sugar. My mug of mint tea sat beside me, cold. It had been cold for hours. There's something sacred about handwriting. I've always believed that. It slows everything down, makes you thoughtful, focused, present. I used to leave Arthur little notes on the fridge in cursive blue ink. He'd leave one back, short, playful, usually underlined twice. And now I was writing again, but not a love note, not a recipe, not a list for the grocery store. I was writing a statement in my own hand. I opened a fresh legal pad, pressed the spine until it cracked just a little, picked up my favorite pen, the one Arthur gave me the year we refinanced the house. He'd said, "Any woman signing something that serious ought to like the pen she's using." And I started, slow, steady, deliberate. I began with my name, my age, where I was born. I wrote that I was of sound mind, that I just had a cognitive evaluation to confirm it. I listed the date, the name of the clinic, the doctor who signed off. I noted my medications. There weren't many, and when they were last reviewed. I wrote that I had no plans to give up control of my estate or my life, and that I'd taken steps to protect both. I wrote about Arthur, about our marriage, our will, our trust, about what he'd intended, what he said out loud and signed. I wrote about Andrew, not as a villain, just as a son who maybe couldn't tell the difference between control and care. I listed the attorneys I'd spoken to, the bank branch where I keep my safe deposit box, the password-protected drive Chloe helped me set up, and at the bottom, I signed my name, in full. Marion Evelyn Blake. The pen left a small blot where I paused too long. I didn't cross it out. I let it stay. I wanted the truth to breathe. Around 4:10 a.m., I called Eleanor. She answered on the second ring. "Marion?" "I wrote something," I said. "A statement. Just me. My words." "Good," she said. "No hesitation. That kind of documentation holds weight, especially in your own hand." She told me to seal it in an envelope, mark it with my lawyer's name, date it clearly. So I did. I slid it into a cream envelope I usually saved for Christmas cards. On the front, in neat cursive, I wrote, "To be opened by counsel only." Underneath, I added the name of the attorney Eleanor referred me to. Then I sat back, the house still quiet, the frost outside even thicker than before. But I didn't feel small. I didn't feel old. I felt present. Arthur once won a zoning case with a single handwritten note and a polite voice. He told me afterward, "Truth doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to stand still and look someone in the eye." So let Andrew shout. Let him file things. Let him argue. Let him posture. This was me, in ink, in full. He showed up with a bottle of Cabernet and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'd already set the table. Linen napkins, the good silver, my grandmother's ceramic serving tray. The house smelled like thyme and roast beef, the kind of smell that used to mean comfort. Chloe helped carry out the baked apples, then slipped out with a quiet, "Call me after." Andrew stood in the doorway for a second before stepping forward, all smooth and polished like always. "Smells great, Mom," he said, holding up the wine like it was a peace offering. "Figured we could catch up, like old times." Like old times, I thought, but I didn't say it. He sat across from me. I poured water, not wine, and asked about his work. He launched into something about Q1 volatility and client portfolios, words that floated past me like dust in the sunlight. I nodded when it felt polite, served the roast, passed the apples. He ate slowly, carefully, like he was performing calm. I waited until dessert plates had been pushed back and his glass was nearly empty. Then I stood up. He watched as I walked over to the sideboard and came back with a manila folder. No label, no creases, clean. I placed it gently in front of him. For a moment, he didn't move. "What's this?" he asked, the smile flickering. "Paperwork," I said. "Since you seem to think I've misplaced my mind, I thought it'd be wise to keep things documented." He opened it slowly. Inside was my cognitive assessment from Dr. Lennox, signed, dated. A notarized copy of the handwritten statement I wrote at 2 a.m., and a cover letter from Eleanor. Precise, sharp, the kind of legal language that doesn't raise its voice but still slices clean. Andrew's face drained like ink bleeding on wet paper. He tried to laugh, some weak comment about how I didn't need to go to all that trouble. I didn't laugh. "You underestimated the wrong woman," I said, looking him in the eye. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It wasn't angry. It was final. He flipped through the pages like he was hoping they'd turn into something else, then slid them back into the folder and set it beside his plate. "You've made your point," he said. "No," I said. "I've made my boundary." He didn't push back, just stood up, mumbled something about an early morning, let himself out. I heard the front door click, then the soft hiss of tires on wet pavement as his car pulled away. I stayed at the table, hands resting on the linen napkin in my lap. The roast had been tender. His silence? Tough. For years, I believed motherhood was about forgiveness. But that night, I learned it can also be about defense. Not to hurt, but to protect what's left of yourself, your memory, your quiet dignity. And somewhere deep inside, I felt a shift. Not loud, but certain. Let the next move be his, but he won't catch me off guard again. If you've ever had to draw a line with someone you love, quietly, without raising your voice, I'd love to hear how you did it. Leave me a comment. Maybe your story will help someone else feel less alone. And if you're still with me on this journey, stay close. The next chapter isn't easy, but it matters. Ever had a moment where you realized love and trust aren't the same thing? I did. Let's talk about it soon. The cold cut through my gloves as I walked up the steps to the credit union. Snowflakes clung to my coat, melting into little wet patches by the time I pushed open the door. Inside, the warmth hit immediately, dry heat mixed with the smell of printer ink and carpet cleaner. I stood a little straighter. I wasn't there to make a withdrawal. I was there to finish something. There was still one account left, one last thread Andrew had left dangling. Miss Rosen, the bank manager, greeted me with that same polite tone she used years ago when Arthur and I first opened the account. She hadn't changed much, still wore her hair in that neat twist, still spoke with that clipped Midwestern rhythm. "Mrs. Blake," she said, glancing at the folder in my hands, "how can we help today?" I set the folder gently on her desk. "I'm here to remove a name and assign a new one." She flipped through the documents: my updated power of attorney, the cognitive assessment, Eleanor's memo. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Impressed, maybe, but she didn't say it, just gave a quiet nod. "This is solid," she said. "All right, let's walk through it together." The process was surprisingly quiet. A few forms, a few clicks. She printed out the new authorizations. I initialed and signed without pause. Chloe would be my new power of attorney, and the joint brokerage account Arthur and I had once kept, just for absolute emergencies, would now be in my name alone. No more shared access, no more backdoors, no more loopholes. I heard Arthur's voice in my mind, low and steady. "Only use it if everything else fails." Well, Arthur, everything else did. Miss Rosen paused just before clicking the final confirmation. "Are you sure about removing Andrew?" I smiled. Not bitter, just clear. "I'm sure." She clicked. By the time I zipped up my coat, the air outside had turned sharper. The snow was falling harder now, more like a quiet flurry, swirling like confetti in the wind. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, folder in hand, feeling the papers shift softly with every step I took. I hadn't realized how much weight that one account carried. It wasn't just money. It was access, assumption, entitlement. Closing it didn't just protect me. It changed the story. I wasn't someone people could quietly plan around anymore. It took 15 minutes to cut him out, and 74 years to believe I could. The rain hadn't let up all morning, just a steady rhythm on the cafe windows, like a gentle reminder to slow down, stay inside, and breathe. Chloe had picked the spot, someplace new, tucked on a quiet side street, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and the smell of fresh blueberry muffins in the air. I saw her by the window, 2 steam bottles between us, her hands wrapped around one like it was the only warm thing left in the world. "I didn't know how to help," she whispered before I even sat down, "but I'm here now, if you'll let me." She didn't need to say more. I sat across from her. No big scene, no speech, just a nod. The kind of nod a mother gives when she's already forgiven you, long before the words ever show up. For a while, we just sat in the quiet. The cafe buzzed around us, clinking dishes, soft conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine, but in our little corner, there was space. Space to remember, space to start again. "I believed him longer than I should have," Chloe said eventually, still staring down at her cup. "He was so sure, so convincing. And I thought, maybe you were just tired or scared. I didn't want to make it worse." "You didn't," I said, simple as that. She blinked, like she didn't expect that answer. "But I didn't stop him either." "No," I said, "but you're here now, and that counts for more than you think." She looked up at me. Her eyes were glassy but steady. "I kept waiting for someone else to fix it," she said. "Then I realized I could be part of the fixing." I reached across the table and placed my hand on hers. Her skin was cold, but it warmed up under mine, like something slowly thawing after too many seasons of frost. "I got the job," she said, with a shy little smile. "That grant writing position, the nonprofit, they called yesterday." "That's wonderful, Chloe," I said, and I meant it. "They work with elder services, housing, legal aid. I don't know, it just feels right. Like maybe I can turn all of this into something useful." I laughed then, not just a polite laugh, the real kind, the kind that cracks open your chest a little and lets the light in. "I always knew you'd find your voice," I told her. "Takes courage to use it." She lifted her bottle, and the steam fogged her glasses just a bit. "To beginnings?" "To beginnings," I said, tapping mine against hers. The rain kept tapping at the glass. but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a rhythm we could walk into together. Some part of me had been waiting for this, for years maybe. Not the apology, not even the job update, but that look in Chloe's eyes, the one that said, "I see you. I believe you. I'm with you now." It wasn't the life I imagined, but maybe it's exactly the one I was meant to land in. Spring came late that year, or maybe I was just more awake to it, those tiny green buds pushing up through the frost like they had something to prove. Outside the community center, the air was still crisp, still holding on to winter, but the sun had started hanging around longer, slipping through the slats of the classroom blinds like it had all the time in the world. Inside, not every chair was filled, but enough were. 6 women, all gray-haired, all sharp-eyed, settling into the room like they belonged. I stood at the front, next to a whiteboard someone had wiped clean, but never really erased. You could still see the faint marks from old lessons, ghosts of words that refused to disappear. I took a breath. "I'm not a lawyer," I said, "and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just someone who's been through it." A few heads nodded. One woman in the front row was already scribbling notes in a little spiral notebook. I held up my own, black leather cover, corners scuffed from use. This is where I started. 1 column for what I owned, 1 for what I gave, and 1 for what I wasn't going to let anyone take. They chuckled at that, soft, real, not bitter. Eleanor sat near the back, her purple scarf looped neatly around her neck. She didn't say much, just gave me that smile, the kind that says, "You've got this." I walked them through what I could: power of attorney, advance directives, where to store documents, who to trust, how to double-check. But mostly, I talked about listening to your own instincts, even when your voice shakes. Love and trust aren't always the same thing, I told them. Sometimes the people we raised don't see us anymore, but that doesn't mean we disappear. When the session ended, most of them stood slowly, stretching stiff knees, exchanging thank yous, but one woman stayed behind. She looked about my age. Her cardigan was a little worn at the elbows. "My son," she said quietly, eyes dropping to the floor. "He asked for access to my account last month, said it was just in case." I nodded. She hesitated. "I didn't think anything of it, but now I'm not sure." I reached into my bag, pulled out a blank notebook, and handed it to her. "Write it all down," I said. "That's where you start." She held it like it meant something. Maybe it did. Outside, the wind rustled the tulips someone had brought in, a small bouquet in a chipped blue vase. It filled the room with a hint of something sweet, not strong, just enough to remind you spring was real. Eleanor came up beside me as I packed my things. "You were steady," she said, "and clear. That's more than most professionals can offer." I smiled, not for her, not even for me, but for the woman with the notebook, and for the others who might finally start their own lists. We walked outside together into the late afternoon sun, the sidewalk dappled in light and shadow. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid either. I was just here, and that was enough. The last bit of light caught the edge of my notebook, the same one where it all began, with fear, with doubt, with questions. Now it holds something steadier, my voice, in full. Because sometimes the hardest part of growing older isn't forgetting, it's being forgotten. But when we speak, when we write, when we stand up for ourselves, even in quiet ways, we remind the world and ourselves that our worth doesn't expire with age. Family should be built on care, not control. And if we listen closely, love does find its way back, even if it shows up a little late. If any part of this story echoes something in your own life, I hope you'll share it in the comments. I'd love to know what strength has looked like for you. And if this chapter touched your heart, I hope you'll stay a little longer. The next story begins with a secret I never planned to share. My daughter didn't know about the assets my husband left me after he died, Luckily, I kept it that way. You won't want to miss it.